All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 6 of Top Bin Talks today, where we're going to do a little bit of a World Cup recap and kind of look at everything that's gone on with Canada soccer recently. And today I am joined by a new co-host in Julian D'Souza, who's going to fill in for Kwame during the holiday period here. And Jules, I know you're in Portugal, paying your respects to a specific player who is, I think, completely out of the GOAT debate now. How is everyone there?
Streets are pretty dead, man. Even the airport, it just feels like everybody got the life sucked out of them. So obviously it's
I,
heartbreaking, but
all
what
the
do
lives in Buenos Aires right now. Oh my God. I don't know if you've seen those pictures, but good Lord.
all my buddies have been sharing me the videos every day, so I don't really get a chance to miss them.
I'm sure there's more than a few that are sharing those videos with you. Yeah, I mean, let's just jump right into it. I mean, he did it. Messi
Completed
did it.
football.
He
Completed football.
he did. He did. I mean, I said they were going to do it beforehand. They were my early prediction. I kind of had them in England in the final. I thought whoever would advance between England and France would probably get there. Um, but I know Portugal were on the side, Spain were on the side. It was going to be a difficult side, but it just always seemed like there would be a European team. It seemed like it was going to be South America versus Europe in the final. Um, but yeah, like how he can do some of this stuff at 35 is insane.
Literally. Yeah, it's scary, man. Fuck. Watching the guy the whole tournament. Every game it's a goal there. Argentina's not Argentina, it's all Messi. So
No, they're not. And I mean, like, again, like for as well as Mbappe played, who's just looks like he's ready to take another step, which is scary. Messi just goal in the group stage and then goal in the round of 16, quarterfinal, semifinal, and final. First player
exactly.
to ever do it at 35.
It's not
And
a bad.
I mean, like you saw like the weight of everything after every single time they advanced. It seemed like he had a little bit less stress taken off him, a little
Mhm.
bit less weight on his shoulders. And you could see like at the end of the shootout in the final how he just dropped, like they all ran and he dropped. He just dropped to his knees after that, after who was it? Muriel scored the
I think
final
I think
penalty.
I think the gas tank finally gave out when they had scored the last PK. He's like, holy fuck. It's finally over. I did it.
Yeah, like it's pretty incredible because I think like one of the harder things, at least kind of reflecting back, like again some ridiculous storylines in the World Cup as well. Obviously, Croatia, Morocco getting to the semifinals from the same group is incredible. Morocco
Like,
being the first African team to ever make it to the semifinals.
mhm.
Like so many cool storylines, but I think like the one thing that I realized in the biggest storyline that kind of came out of it for me was there are very few teams that really have a chance to win the World Cup. And I think with Messi now looking like that's his final World Cup, I don't see them ever getting back.
Actually, we shouldn't say never say never, but obviously losing Messi now is like losing fuck pretty much
It,
everything.
like it was like they needed Messi to replace Maradona for them to get back to that level. Whereas if you look at like Brazil year over year, it's like, oh my God, how many players are
Exactly.
coming out of this region? If you look at France, same thing. Germany, same thing. Spain. Um, the only one that you could look at that I think most people put on the list that you would argue would be England because they haven't won it since 66, but every single year they seem to have a team of players where you're like, oh, you could see them getting there.
Exactly.
Whereas you take Messi out of this team,
What
do
are
they
they?
get out of the group
Do they
after
qualify?
losing to Saudi Arabia? Like, do they qualify? Yeah. Even that, like, it's one of those things where it's going to be really interesting to see that transition, but um, just such a special result, I think, for most people outside of the country of Portugal, who I hear were actively rooting against Argentina the
Yeah,
longer that tournament went on.
yeah. I don't have no hate, honestly. As soon as Portugal went out, I was like, for the sake of football, I want Messi to win now. Would have been sweeter if Ronaldo was to win, but can't really be mad at Messi. Guy balled, he deserved it. He's the best
Yeah,
player from the first day of the tournament. So
yeah, man. And I mean, I think that, like, the more impressive thing weren't even his goals; they were his assists.
yeah. What did he have? 12 goal involvements in 7 games?
Yeah, he had 8 goals and 4 assists.
Something like that. That's ridiculous.
Something stupid.
Yeah.
Like, and the funniest thing is, because I think Varadol from Croatia was supposed to win the Young Player of the Tournament, and then Messi's performance against him essentially took it away from him.
Mhm.
Because I don't like I thought Enzo Fernandez was good. I thought he was the best defender in the tournament, arguably, though.
Yeah.
And a semifinal where Messi torches him for 90 minutes, just takes it away from him, is incredible.
Exactly. No, but
Um,
young player of the tournament, I think Enzo well deserved. Kid is
he's a stud, man. He's a
Yeah.
stud. I don't like, that's the thing. Like, I don't think you can. It's not like it's a bad decision. I just thought that, again, for Croatia, he was such a key cog in that machine, and for
Yeah,
them to
people,
still
a lot
finish
of people on
third.
Twitter were like slandering it, but you can't really hate on Enzo. The kid went to the final. He was a big piece in that team. So for him to win Young Player of the Year, I don't really see a problem. But a lot of Croatians, well, obviously with their Croatian bias, they were pretty pissed about the guard Viol or however the fuck you say his name.
I know, I'm still same thing. The G and the V. It's a really hard. It's a horrible transition there.
Oh, he'll be gone though. Apparently
Oh
Madrid's
yeah,
like a lot
Chelsea.
of
Oh yeah, every big club's coming in for him now. So, I mean, I think they're all kind of like that. If you look at, like, you've got Enzo Fernandez, who looks like he's going to Liverpool. Jude Bellingham's no chance staying at Dortmund. Varadol he's leaving RB Leipzig at the end of the year for sure. Like, it'll be the other thing that'll be interesting, obviously, off the back of a World Cup, there were a lot of injuries, increased injury time, a lot of players picked up knocks. It'll be interesting to see whether or not clubs in Europe are going after players in January, or if they're going to sign pre-contracts, almost take their medicine this year rather than try and get something over the line, pay way out, like an outrageous sum to get them in for another 2 weeks when guys have knocks, guys are going on vacation. It'll be kind of interesting to see how that progresses. But just sticking on the World Cup theme, what were your thoughts about the whole tournament? Obviously it's probably your fourth or fifth tournament that you really remember.
Yeah. Yeah, fifth probably. 06, 2010, 14, 18, 22. Yeah, fifth.
Yeah. So just if you compare it to those ones, what were your overall thoughts on the whole tournament?
It was definitely the most memorable World Cup for sure. Like, fuck ton of upsets. Obviously the final, everybody on Twitter, best football match I ever watched. Like, it's just, you can't really put it into words. Like, if you were to tell me Morocco is going to go to the semifinal of this World Cup before it started, I would have looked at you and said, what drugs do you smoke? If you told me, like, it would be Messi and Mbappe has a hat trick in the final. Like, there's so much shit that's so unpredictable. Like, you can't really. So for this World Cup, most definitely the most memorable World Cup, and crazy with all the upsets but
Yeah, 100%. I think it's the greatest final I think we're ever going to watch. I don't think we'll ever get a better one. And I remember when it got drawn, and as a neutral, obviously, because my family down the line is British, so I was pretty devastated with the France-England result. Looking at it, I really hope France gets to the final. I hope they play Argentina, because it was going to be an open final. Neither team were going to sit back and defend. So I thought, like, if Morocco had made it to the final, which would have been an insane storyline, or if Croatia made it to the final, it would have been a lot less open. So kind of getting those two teams specifically, especially because you can't not play open with Mbappe and Messi. You have to. You got to go play through them. You got to let them go. You've got to play to their strengths. And so that, for me, I saw that and went, this could be incredible. And thank God it was, because it was like a hat trick in the final and you lose.
4. He scored his PK too. He scored on Emmy Martinez 4 times.
Like, and he went to this. He went this. He had 3 penalties. He went the same way every time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, I wouldn't say it was the best World Cup as far as like, again, storyline wise. Yeah, it's the most memorable. It wasn't the best World Cup from a footballing perspective, though. I don't think. All in all, I thought 2006. I remember 2006, and 2006 was a really, really, really good one in Germany. And then 2014 in Brazil. I thought those two, from an overall footballing perspective, were probably better, but they were less memorable. And maybe part of the less memorable side of it is the off the field stuff. That obviously the news around Qatar and
Yeah.
how much the human rights stuff off the field, and how that was going to translate to on the field stuff, and no one wants to go, and only 1.8 million people traveled to go
Exactly.
watch it in Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's fucking insane.
Yeah, but with the whole human rights thing, like obviously football is the biggest sport in the world, and there's times to open, like people are allowed to open their mouths about things, but you're there for football at the end of the day, especially the players. Like the thing with Germany when they were doing this and their team picture, and then they got knocked out, and then a whole bunch of people from Qatar are like shitting on them. Like, yo, you're there for the World Cup. Like, this is the biggest stage in the world. Like, put that shit to the side and just play football. So you're there for at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, and like, it's one of those things. I don't envy the position that any of those players are in, because again, it's not up to them.
I know.
They don't have a choice. Like, FIFA's the one that decided to go do it. It's obvious that it was corrupt in deciding to even go there, which it was most likely. And again, part of it was most like, really, you guys went to Russia 4 years before that? Telling me that wasn't corrupt too? There wasn't some sort of corrupt little negotiations there?
It's football.
Like, come on. Like, it's just, and the World Cup in Russia was fantastic, like from the footballing perspective. And I think that's the part where, again, I think there were like part of the thing that probably took away from the shine of Qatar was the political stunts that some people took, right? Like you said, with the Germany team, media members showing up and dressed a certain way, and you're like, well, why am I getting taken out? Well, what do you think? Like, I think there was an English fan that dressed up as a crusader that got escorted out. Like, what are you thinking, man? You literally invaded that place
People just
all
want
those
to
years ago.
They want to test the limits to see what they could do.
Yeah, for sure. So the off the field stuff, I don't think, there's always going to be something. At the Euros, it was the hooliganism in London. So off the field stuff, I don't think you're ever going to quite get away from. But again, this one just seemed to have a different taste to it, just because of how the tournament was awarded. But as far as on the field stuff, it was I don't think anyone could complain.
Yeah, literally.
And it makes it incredibly exciting for 3.5 years.
I'll sit here and talk about it for the next 100 till I go.
Like, the fact that 1.8 million went to Qatar to go watch. Can you imagine how many are going to come to Canada, US, and Mexico?
Literally.
We're going to get like 30 or 40 million people.
Yeah. Traveling
Like,
all the spots for sure.
The fact that it's all the way on the East Coast and the West Coast as well. So it's going to be super accessible. I'm sure they're going to plan it accordingly. Just like, obviously, depending on what group you're drawn in, are there, maybe the Asian countries are on the West Coast, and some of the more Middle Eastern teams might be or the Middle Eastern teams are on the West, and European teams and more the South American teams are on the East or something. They'll definitely probably try and plan that accordingly. But so obviously this was a unique World Cup from the perspective that everyone stayed in one place. So it's the first time that the teams weren't traveling in between.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So do you think, from like a Canadian perspective, would you want to see Canada play in Vancouver and Toronto and have to do all that flying? Or do you rather them just be like, nah, fuck that, stay in one kind of location where the travel's minimized? so you can try and get a better result. So you kind of take away from the fatigue.
Yeah, I think for Canada, John Herdman says it himself, the fortress is BMO. So I think you play all the games at BMO, just get absolutely fucking rammed, get everybody buzzing, make it like a fortress. Like Portugal played Morocco, and the Moroccan fans were fucking buzzing. Like you could not hear shit except the Moroccan fans. Like go to BMO Field, make the fucking place a fortress like that, and whoever they play against should just get bullied. Like these guys should be like, holy fuck, bro, where are we? We're at BMO, bro. Like this is us. So, but nah, don't do the travel. I know it would be like unfair to the people. Like for a guy like you that lives out there in BC, it would be tough. But this is where it is. Toronto, man. Come on. That's where the fortress is.
Well, it's also going to depend on where exactly, like how many, depends kind of what the format's going to be as well, right? Like how many games is BMO getting? Well,
Yeah.
BMO's getting less than Vancouver, but like how many teams are even in the group? Like, I think we kind of have to wait for that because FIFA keep coming back on. Because again, the one thing I'm so not looking forward to is that it's 48 teams. Why
Yeah,
are we
that's
increasing the number of teams? Exactly. It's a joke. It's more money. Well, who gives a fuck? Like teams, England won 6-1, Spain won 7-1. Like their teams getting Portugal beat Switzerland in the round of 16, what, 6-1?
this one.
Like before, like Germany beating Brazil in the semifinal 8-2 was an anomaly. That never happened. And it's happened 3 times this World Cup. And now we're going to increase the number of teams.
Yeah, I feel it's a waste to be honest.
Like I think it just takes away from the just how elite, the elite of the elite of the elite that the tournament is kind of made out to be. Obviously more games is nice to see. There's more people that get to see it. And I get that it's the World Cup, so it should be for most teams, but I'm really, the fact that FIFA still haven't figured out what the proper group stage will be and all this stuff is just, that's the one thing that makes me nervous and that I'm really not looking forward to as far as that. Because again, there's going to be continuous media coverage of it and all that. But one thing just really quickly, looking back, how many people in the Canadian media space are regretting some of their takes after Canada's World Cup?
Yeah, I think a lot, to be honest. Should have let it play out a little bit. At least get past like the round of 16 or something. Everybody's la 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 about Canada. The 2 teams that came out of their group were on each side of the semifinal. So
Well, I think like the one thing that I looked at the most was everyone talked about like it's just Croatia, Belgium. And everyone, I thought it was the group of death because for me, Canada was the 4th best team. So I was like, Canada are 4 compared to every other group who's got a team that was 4. Are you kidding me? Because again, like knowing how good Morocco are, you're like, yeah, they're a really good, like very, very, very good side. And so I found that most people kind of look past Morocco even. They went, oh no, we're number 3. And it's like, okay, hold on. We got to do something on a world stage a little bit more than winning just CONCACAF, because winning CONCACAF is incredibly difficult. That was a difficult step in itself. But we haven't done what those guys have done yet. And so like, let's get there. And now that they're at the World Cup, it's like, okay. And we went and they were able to go toe to toe with Morocco there for a bit. Yeah, they had a terrible start, but at least they were able to grow into the game and almost get something out of it. But kind of let's turn away from that. Some massive news in the Canada soccer space. Diana Matheson and Christina Sinclair were able to announce a professional women's league. Just initial thoughts on that, man. 2025 is the suggested start date for that.
I think it's big. I think it's big for female soccer in Canada. But like Kwame said on a couple episodes ago, like this is gonna take a lot of planning. It's not like let's wake up one day, let's just go open a pro league. You need facilities, you gotta find the right coaches, gotta find players, obviously. Like there's a lot of planning going into it. But 2025 is also very far away, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. But it's very, very big for female soccer in Canada.
Yeah, I mean it's huge, right? That's kind of the next pathway at the highest level. Again, the one thing that does scare me, I understand why they're doing it in 2025. I think everyone does. Height for the sport in this country will never, ever, ever be higher than in 2025, only a year out from the World Cup. But that's only 2 years away, man. That's not that far. Like that is a lot closer than I think some people realize. So I'm excited to kind of see these announcements continuously roll in because that'll be super key. But the one thing that the only thing I'll say, and this goes for the CPL as well, because again, at the highest level, at the pro level, this is a huge step for the pathway, because stepping out of youth and jumping into the NWSL or the MLS just is completely unrealistic at this point. So you need that extra step, which is fantastic that we're now building towards that. But I find that both of them paint over the cracks of the foundational issue that we have in this country, and that's our youth and our grassroots setup. This doesn't go to solving that, because at the same time, you still only have a handful of people that are selecting players for the national team pool. And I'm not 100% sure how it works in the East, but I know in the West that the Whitecaps do not work with local clubs. There is zero coordination after U13, U14.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that Joel Waterman is the only BC kid who was at the World Cup. He was not a Whitecap kid.
Yeah, I talk about that with my boys sometimes. I say Canada will never take that like next step in football and having like a real football culture until like exactly what you're saying about like teams opening up. And like obviously our grassroots very important because that's where you find like that's where kids get started. So once they improve on that, then Canada, maybe you'll see them take the next step. Like if we sit here and think about it, like look at the Canadian national team, fuck ton of ballers. But imagine if like, the whole like system leading up to it was set up for them properly. It could have been a whole different story going to Qatar.
Exactly. Right. And like, again, part of me is, guys need time to develop at different rates. And there are people who've written articles now talking about that local technical directors haven't done their job properly. And you're like, well, what do you want them to do? First of all the players who go to the Whitecaps, TFC Montreal, where do you think they get their players from? They don't develop them from age 6. Like technical directors are getting them to that point. So once you lose that player, they're not really any, how are you supposed to impact those kids anymore? Exactly. Number one. Number two, half of our national team were NCAA players. Are we going to completely dismiss that pathway all of a sudden? Because that doesn't seem like a really smart idea. And so that's one thing that I look at from both sides, on the men and the women. Like that still needs to be a really legitimate pathway that we still need to continuously build and keep building exposure for Canadians to be able to go and do that. Because some people aren't going to be ready at 18 to step into a pro league. They're just not. They need to get to 23, 24. And so, if we're taking the best players out of the local men's and women's leagues, so now the overall quality in those leagues drop, well, people aren't going to be taken out of those leagues to go to the pro ranks anymore.
Exactly.
So there's, it's the kind of the catch-22 in doing this. But again, with the foundational small part, like if you're going to be taking kids out at a young age, why aren't you working with those clubs? That makes no sense to me. Like, how are you not working with them to try and improve the overall player pool? I get that you're not going to play against them. I disagree with it, but I get that up into a certain age. But how are you not basically looking at how can we expand this player pool? We're looking at, we want to try and develop these types of players. But again, like do you find that these clubs produce any players who are different from each other? I find they're all the same player. Every position is the same thing. And it's like, well, how do you expect anyone else to break through if all you do is look for the same person?
Can't.
Which is tough. But hopefully like, this is an incredibly massive step. I'm excited to see where things go. And again, it provides some of those women now who do go to college. Here's a route back.
Exactly.
Here's a route back to keep playing and keep improving. And hopefully it just increases that national team player pool. Obviously, the women are a top 10 team in the world and they need to continuously increase the number of players that they want to see and go from that. It looks like they've already brought on some pretty good sponsors, obviously Air Canada, which is opposite from WestJet, like CPL have, which is kind of interesting. But it looks like it's really got some legs here. Obviously, the Whitecaps women and Calgary Foothills jumping in nice and early is awesome to see. Two Western teams that were jumped in right away, which is fantastic. And yeah, just again, it'll be interesting to see. I know they want to get to 8 teams, but I think like the biggest thing that I would say, and this is where I think some CPL clubs haven't done so well, is they have to engage with their community. They have to. Like the Canada game against Croatia was watched more in Canada than the World Cup final. More people tuned in to watch Canada play Croatia at the same time as the World Cup final.
Fucked to think about.
And it just showed like sports are a regional thing. More people in this country cared to watch Canada play than they cared to watch Messi win the World Cup. So if these clubs can now come in, whether they're CPL clubs or in the new women's professional league, they can come in and really identify with their market. That's how you're going to grow.
Exactly.
Because again, like Kwame's brought up before, we have a country of 38 million people, and we're the second biggest land geographic country in the world. And the reality is no one is from another country. There's not going to be a significant amount of the population that's going to pay a subscription fee to watch, whether it's CPL or the women's league. So you have to identify with your local market. You have to. And if you do that, you're going to be able to grow nationally. And that's really what I hope for both leagues, that's what they can really develop into. And staying on the topic with Canada Soccer, obviously Patrice Geyser hired by Halifax, going there, and he's brought a couple boys with him from what I hear.
Yes, sir. I think he has obviously, first things first, big congratulations to my guy Patrice. We all knew it was coming one day, but the day came sooner than we thought. But yeah, big congrats to him. I think he's bringing Jordan out there, obviously the assistant. Vaughn, good guy, Portuguese guy.
So he's in mourning too about Ronaldo losing this GOAT debate.
I was actually with him at Hershey. We were at Sigma Showcase together. We were just holding each other and crying and reminiscing about the good days. But nah, Jordan will be out there with him, obviously. And I think they just announced Mass Farron, League One Player of the Year, Golden Boot.
Yep.
It's a professional playing in League One, so it's big pickup for Halifax. Obviously, he'll be in good hands with Pat there. So we'll just have to wait and see what he does.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this is kind of, I think, the thing that we were hoping the league would do, right? Like, I would hope that Pat brings more guys from League One, because again, that just means that he's seeing something in that league where maybe other coaches who aren't in there all the time aren't seeing, right? And he's a guy who's grinded a lot in that market, and now he's having his opportunity to go to the next level, and it's the right opportunity for him and his family, which is awesome, and he's able to jump at it. And now we can kind of see it's kind of that whole thing of a local coach being developed, now being given an opportunity at the next level, and now he can bring his guys to that next level.
Literally.
Which is fantastic, which is exactly what you want to see. And again, what you would hope to see in other markets, as League One Canada now starts to expand, you would hope that those other markets would follow suit, right? And so it's super exciting. It'll be interesting to see how it goes year one. I think Halifax it's always going to be a little bit of a project. I think it's just one of those markets that I think is going to have a decent amount of turnover year after year. But yeah, no, it's another storyline leading into next year. Obviously, Vancouver FC also announced on the exact opposite side of the country, all the way from the east to the west. And yeah, so that one's in my backyard. So it's going to be exciting to see what they decide to do. Obviously, Cali Irving was announced as their first signing. But yeah, finally they got back to 8 teams at least.
They had to, with the Edmonton situation, they had to put another team in there.
Yeah, and the one thing that I'll find that I think will be a little bit interesting is obviously as Vancouver FC go forward, they start announcing more players. It's gonna be interesting to see, where they decide to find them. Are they going to wait for? It seems as though they're waiting for most teams to release their players, and then they can have their pick.
Literally.
As far as who's remaining, which you understand, that's where kind of your established pool is, but I would hope that they're going to kind of reach a little bit further out and go try and find some guys and just kind of poke around. I mean, I think part of it is they're hooped a little bit being in the most expensive place to live in the country. So and with inflation rising, rental housing prices going up, obviously you would hope that salaries would also start to eke a little higher just to make sure that things could progress that way.
I think the league minimum did get upped. But
I think so, which is again is great. That's showing some growth, right? And so yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of the first steps they decide to take. I know Cali pretty well, so I'm super happy Cali gets to come back home. Fucking stud of a goalkeeper. He's one of the best in the league. He's shown that over the last couple of years for sure. And yeah, so just again, kind of, it'll be cool to see after Rob was a part of building the Pacific Foundation. It'll be interesting to kind of see what he's learned and going into another expansion team, see what they can maybe try and do in year one, seeing what that experience will bring. But yeah, and then you know what? We'll just finish off with just looking ahead now. European football's back. Arsenal at the top of the table, but they lose out on a pretty big piece.
Yep.
You know how long he's out for?
It's a big range. It's like they're saying, some people are saying it's 3 months, and then some people are saying it could range from 3 to 7 months for him to be fully fit. So it's a big loss, but I've been on Twitter every day reading reports. Arsenal's like, apparently the Mikhailo Mudryk kid from Shakhtar, the deal's done already. So what I'm thinking is Mikel Arteta goes with Martinelli as a 9, and he'll bring the Mudryk kid in. But obviously, this is where my heart got a little bit warm. There's also reports they want to bring in João Felix, because João Felix wants out in January.
Oh, he wants out so fast. Yeah, hear his comments. It's really nice enjoying football again. Like, oh my God, the guy wants out so bad. But
I'm a Benfica fan, and when he signed to Atletico, I knew it was going to be a flop. They don't play his. You got to be like a robot to play for Diego Simeone. You better be ready to go cover 14, 15K a game and go hit guys. And
yeah, that one will be pretty interesting, just because I mean, obviously everyone in the world is linked to Man United, but PSG apparently are also now in the mix. And talking about PSG, Messi just signed a new 1-year contract, apparently. Stay there for an extra year.
I thought he was done. When he won the World Cup, I was like, Inter Miami here.
No, you know what? I think, I don't know. I think part of it is I don't think he would ever go before Ronaldo.
No.
Because I think like part of that, I think part of the greatness which sucks because I mean I grew up a Ronaldo fan, being a massive Man United fan. Part of that is there's no chance Messi reaches these heights without Ronaldo. No chance.
Yeah, I don't
With
think
the
so.
without them playing against each other, and then those years where it was Barcelona versus Real Madrid.
I'm starting to reminisce about it. I'm gonna go on after this. I'm gonna go on YouTube, start watching highlights and stuff from it.
I mean, that was kind of, I think, for most people in their 20s, that was probably peak.
Yeah, that's peak football for me. Literally.
Like, and so, he signs an extra year. Mbappe's signed for what, another year?
100.
And so, looking ahead, I guess, what do you think the main storyline is going to be coming out of the World Cup? Like looking when we go back to club football, what do you think is going to kind of be like the key storylines that everyone's going to need to follow?
I'm not even sure, to be honest. Like a story.
Because I think sorry,
You have one?
I think for me it's going to be to see kind of where like the bigger. So you had a number of clubs who had a lot of players at the tournament. So for me, like the interesting, at least in the Prem, is going to be obviously Arsenal top of the table. Are they going to be able to sustain it without Jesus? But Man City players played 3,000 minutes more than Arsenal players did. So now they have all that. They have way more time now on their legs in a really short period of time. Are they even going to be able to sustain that going through the rest of the season?
Yeah, it'll be weird for club football. But I'm like kind of excited to see like how it'll shape out. Like how will teams deal with so many guys coming in? Like a good example is Luka Modric. Luka Modric just ran his socks off. And the guy's like, he's old, he's getting there. What do you do when he comes back? Do you sit him? Do you like
Yeah.
monitor him? Like, okay, we'll give you 30. Next week he'll play 60. What do you do with guys like that? Like these guys are superstars. They want to play.
Well, like I even looked. So United are about to play. Like Casemiro starting. Like I was like Bruno Fernandes, all these guys. And I'm like, they just got back.
Mhm.
Like they just got back. I get that they had a little bit of time off, but good lord.
Literally.
So that I would hope the thing that I hope comes out the most out of this is more parity across every league. That would be the thing that I'd be really interested to kind of see and follow. Just because you had a lot of the bigger clubs lose players for a number of time, but also they played a lot of minutes.
Exactly.
And so that is kind of the storyline that I think I'd be most interested to kind of follow and see. But yeah, I mean, I guess like the last thing that I think we'll talk about here is obviously with Messi and Ronaldo now seemingly passing the torch. The storyline's always going to be Mbappe and Holland. Who do you think who else do you think they're kind of passing this on to? Because I personally don't think anyone's going to get near them. I don't.
I
But
don't.
who do you think is going to be in that group where you're like, this is the next cohort of just megastars of
Right
the
now,
young players? We'll keep Neymar out of it because Neymar is kind of a part of that with them. He was always like number 3.
I don't know, to be honest. Right now, I think it is just Mbappe and Holland. There's like a bunch of ifs, maybes, but established
Yeah.
players. I think it's just Erling Holland and Kylian Mbappe.
Yeah, I think like the other ones, the only other ones that really come to mind are like Gavi, Pedri, Jude Bellingham. I think they're the only ones that can really get close.
Yeah, like exactly what I'm saying. Like about this that being established and shit. And like doing a week in, week out already at the ages that they're at, it's those guys for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, and it brings us back to that question, and especially, and I mean, it's going to be recency bias after the World Cup, but Mbappe or Holland.
You know, it's actually funny. I was sitting in the barber shop and this came up, and I looked at everybody. I said, "You guys are all forgetting what Holland's doing because he's been sitting on the beach while Kylian Mbappe is scoring goals at the World Cup." I'm like, "Yo, you guys are forgetting he has like 21 goal involvements in 13 games. That's absolutely unheard of." I'm like, "Oh, just because he's Norwegian and he's not playing at the World Cup, everybody forgets who Erling Haaland is." And I was arguing with a guy in the barber shop, and I said, "I'll come back here 2 weeks after the Premier League starts, and I'll remind you who Erling Haaland is. I'll just show you team sheets, 6 goals. He'll probably score 8 goals in 2 games because that's how hungry he'll be when he comes back."
Yeah, and I mean, like, I think it just depends on kind of who you're looking for, right? Like, because the other thing, like, the biggest thing that I noticed, and again, it's unfair. I'm on the Holland camp too, because I think it's a lot harder. Not that you'd ever be able to replace what Mbappe can give you, but I think it's harder to replace what Holland can give you as a 9. It's what every team is desperate for, is a number 9 that can just rack goals up, because there aren't many of them. There's really not. Like, Gabriel Jesus was playing second fiddle to Richarlison, who doesn't play up front for Brazil, or up front for Tottenham, sorry, because Harry Kane's there. Because Harry Kane's one of them. Like,
Mhm.
it's so difficult to find a number 9. That's the main reason why I choose it. But to see how sharp his movement, how much sharper his movement and his decisive actions are against the best players in the world, that was eye-opening for me. I went, holy shit.
Mhm.
Some of the cuts, and so when he decides to do something, it was just incredible.
Yeah, he definitely has like a nose for goal. He's like what, like a lot of English pundits when they say like he's a fox in the box. Like he's gonna do what it takes to go score goals. So
Yeah, no, I'm with you though. I'd still pick Holland.
I
I
think so
would.
too.
I maybe it's old school in me, but just something about a number 9 that just scores in every possible way. All right, man. Well, that is going to probably wrap it up here for our World Cup recap. Obviously, a lot going on in Canada soccer. We're going to continue to monitor, um, obviously, the progressions of everything going on. And Jules, thanks for joining us from Portugal.
My guy.
All right, pal.
Later, Jonesy.